When Europe marched to war in the summer of 1914, each of the warring nations believed that the fighting would be over in a few weeks. Instead, by the end of December, the First World War had already claimed close to 1 million lives, and there was no end in sight. But on December 25, 1914, at several points on the Western Front, there was a brief respite from the fighting, a Christmas truce. I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to a Great War special on the Christmas Truce of 1914. Now, the Christmas Truce was actually a series of unofficial ceasefires along the front and a brief celebration of the holiday with gestures of goodwill and humanity between the enemies. A more formal Christmas truce had in fact already been suggested by no less than Pope Benedict XV 3 weeks earlier, but the warring nations refused such an official act. This brief meeting of enemies as friends in no man's land was something that thousands of men experienced on that day 100 years ago, and today, that event is often seen as a shining moment of sanity that stands out from the rest of the bloody war, a spontaneous effort by the lower ranks to create a general peace that could perhaps have blossomed if not for the interference of generals and politicians. The reality is less romantic and a bit more down to earth. It was a totally organic affair that in many places didn't even register a mention, while in others was a life-changing event that had a huge impact on those who took part. But it wasn't even the first spontaneous truce that month. On December 11th, 2 weeks earlier, the War Diary of the Essex Regiment records a rather peculiar truce between British and German forces that goes as follows. Quote, "As I told you before, our trenches are only 30 or 40 yards away from the Germans. This led to an exciting incident the other day. Our fellows have been in the habit of shouting across to the enemy, and we used to get answers from them. We were told to get into conversation with them, and this is what happened. From our trenches, 'Good morning, Fritz.' No answer. 'Good morning, Fritz.' Still no answer. 'Good morning, Fritz.' From German trenches, 'Good morning.' And then from our trench, 'How are you?' 'All right.' 'Come over here, Fritz.' 'No, if I come, I get shot.' 'No, you won't. Come on.' 'No fear. Come and get some fags, Fritz.' 'No, you come halfway and I meet you.' 'All right.' One of our fellows thereupon stuffed his pocket with fags and got over the trench. The German got over his trench, and right enough, they met halfway and shook hands, Fritz taking the fags and giving cheese in exchange. It was good to see the Germans standing on top of their trenches, and the English also, with caps waving in the air, all cheering. About 18 of our men went halfway and met about the same number of Germans. This lasted about half an hour, when each side returned to their trenches to shoot at each other again. What I have written is the truth, but don't think we got chums, as 2 of our fellows were killed the same night, and I don't know how many of them." End quote. So this happened 2 weeks before Christmas, but a week before that, British General Sir Horace Smith-Darien had issued specific instructions against this sort of fraternization with the enemy. He wrote that experience of trench warfare shows time and time again that enemy troops in close proximity to one another slide, if allowed, into a live and let live mentality, which he saw as the greatest danger to morale there was. For once the soldiers sink into this sort of lethargy, it is extremely hard to get them out of it and continue to fight effectively. So although this phenomenon is understandable and can even inspire sympathy, Smith-Darien ordered his divisional commanders to absolutely prohibit any friendly intercourse with the enemy of any kind. But even following this directive still allowed the troops to prepare for Christmas. On December 23rd, a German soldier, Karl Aldag, reports that both sides had been heard singing hymns in the trenches. German troops coming into the lines brought Christmas trees, and some men began to place them on the parapets of the fire trenches. On Christmas Eve, 1914, the weather changed to a hard frost, making trench conditions slightly more bearable. 98 British soldiers die that day, many from sniper fire. A German plane drops a bomb on Dover, the first air raid in British history. As the day wears on, carols and hymns are sung in greater and greater numbers, and a gradual exchange of communication and even meetings takes place in some parts of the line. Many of these meetings are to arrange collection of bodies. In other places, firing continues. Battalion officers are uncertain how to react, though in general, they maintain battle order. The night brings a clear, still air with a hard frost. And then, it's Christmas. Church services are held behind the lines, Christmas dinners are taken in barns and shattered buildings. But the fraternization is the big story. Many men record the strange and wonderful events of the day. Many Englishmen exchange tokens or addresses with German soldiers, a lot of whom speak English. In other areas, there is considerable activity. The 2nd Grenadier Guards suffer losses in a day of heavy fighting, for example, and as night fell, things grew quiet as men fell back to their trenches. Boxing Day, December 26th, brought with it light snows. In some areas, the friendly spirit of the day before was resumed. Gradually, however, officers and men on both sides began to resume normal trench caution. The atmosphere in general remained relaxed, though, as officers took a pragmatic view of events. By now, however, news of the truce was reaching higher levels of command. General Smith-Darien requested particulars of those units and officers who took part in the truce, with a view of disciplinary action. But as it turned out, no action was taken against any unit or officer. Over the next few days, the weather turned wet and nasty again, yet the friendly mood remained in some areas, though open fraternization stopped. So on New Year's Eve, there was singing and shouting, but no actual truce. But what actually went on during the truce itself? Well, people talked. Most of the men just hung out with each other. There was a large exchange of gifts, it being Christmas. German soldiers swapped Dresden's stolen Christmas cake and sausages for British jam or whiskey. Buttons were a big thing to give or to receive from the enemy. In some places, former barbers gave haircuts, and one German, a juggler, gave an impromptu and somewhat surreal performance in the middle of no man's land. And there was, of course, the football match. Yes, on Christmas Day, 1914, a football match was played between British and German troops on the Western Front. It began with a British soldier kicking a football out of his trench, and I've often wondered how it got into the trench in the first place. The Germans joined in, and according to the diary of the 6th Cheshire Regiment, the Germans won the match 3-2. This mood of joy and peace was not shared by everyone, though. There were a lot of French troops that were incredulous and scornful of this happy time of fraternization that was taking place on their invaded soil. Some British troops reported French women spitting at them for taking part in the truce. And of course, there was no real hope of the truce being maintained, and the war quickly returned with all its fury. The truce was fairly widely reported at the time, but oddly enough, historians didn't show much interest in it. The first comprehensive look at it came only in 1981 with the BBC documentary Peace in No Man's Land and its companion book, Christmas Truce, which featured loads of first-hand accounts from letters and diaries. But it happened. In the middle of the largest war in history came a moment of peace and humanity. Sadly, such a moment was not to happen again, for by Christmas 1915, those same men who celebrated the truce with each other were now murdering each other with poison gas. This was modern war. It's almost the new year, and the war has now raged for 5 months. If you'd like to know how the world spiraled into this war, click here to see our 3-part Prelude to War specials. And if you'd like to read some soldiers' letters on how they actually experienced the Christmas truce, you'll find links to them in the description box below. Happy holidays.